Hello, you filthy beasts. Ryzdine here, playing this game called Lake of Voices, and it's a visual novel, described as, well, the story. Anyone can be saved, but not everyone can be. Kika the Steadfast is a sensitive and empathetic woman who uses a mask of stoicism to protect herself from the harsh world she lives in. Much of everything she does has been an attempt to find some semblance of security, including the career path she's chosen to pursue. Kika works as an official guard for one of the many tiny villages in the region. Her most recent assignment is to travel with fellow guard Bermel to an allied town that has been under siege by raiders. Alright. Looks like it's going to be pretty cool. Let's start. Certain choices are timed. Time running out isn't something to completely avoid. In some cases, not getting involved can open new possibilities. Other choices aren't timed. These options only determine whether Kika has any special affection for another character or not. If you survive until the second night, the story will branch off into one of 5 different plot lines based on your earlier decisions. The other characters cannot manage all situations in the various plot lines, regardless of what you do. If a character isn't making it, try getting that plot with a different set of survivors, or having the same group of characters venture through some other storyline. Becoming closer to someone can add and or remove future choice options, and change how some scenes play out. Your decision to build that connection may not go unnoticed by the other characters. Earning the full amount of affection with certain characters can require getting into specific plot lines. My grip on my lantern tightens as the fog around us thickens. While the forests in this area are relatively safe compared to Sinnlos, I can't help but feel my hair stand on end the further we get. My free hand fingers the hilt of my sword, something akin to a nervous flex.
Have you seen it before?
Bermel breaks the silence, either sensing my unease or swatching his own. I hope it's the latter.
I haven't. I've had no reason to go near this cursed lake until now. What have you?
Bermel scratches his chin casually, as though I asked what his favorite food is.
I traveled the long way around it once before. Not so pleasant. Something about it just frays your nerves. Although, even being near it is enough.
So I'm not the only one who feels it. A sense of relief hits me, but not enough to undo the buzzing of anxiety. The lake. Sinnlos. Most try their best to avoid it all their lives. The hundreds who die attempting to cross its unearthly black water, dragged to death by the creatures lurking within, aren't a secret.
No wonder you were assigned this mission.
There are few who've had first-hand experience with the place, even if from a distance. He'll probably keep being picked whenever they need someone to cross, for however long he's with us. Bermel shrugs, bringing my attention back to the dark path before us.
At least we're taking the bridge this time. It'll only take 2 days instead of double that, and the sooner this place is behind us, the better.
It would be preferable not to risk it. But time is of the essence. We don't really have a choice.
One of our allied villages, Hemmer, is being harassed by brigadiers, a band of ruffians. We don't have many guards to send as an assist, only Babel and myself. The least we can do is arrive before we are too late to be of any use. These kinds of squabbles happen often, but have to be put down lest they turn into a blood grudge or all-out war. The last we heard, neither option was that far off.
I can also see why they chose you to come out here.
I glance at Bermel, an eyebrow raised. A slight smile plays across his lips.
You're always so calm and so serious. Nothing can get to you. You're the best choice they had.
A smile now tugs at my own lips. I would like to thank him, but that wouldn't be so calm and serious as he just described. And if that's how he sees me, I'd like to keep it that way. My lack of reaction only makes his smile grow, and he chuckles a bit before refocusing on the path. I do the same. It wouldn't be right to let my guard down in a place like this. Bermel appears to feel differently, however.
You know the town on the other side of the lake, though. It's not so similar to ours. If all goes well, perhaps we'll have enough time to enjoy the new area.
For the most part, I ignore him. nodding when applicable. Bamel is a talkative sort, and if chatting helps keep his worries down and his sword hand ready, I have no complaints. After a time, the thick fog surrounding us begins to clear. A slick wooden dock comes into view, and with it sounds of water gently lapping at its sides. Oops. Bamel shifts beside me, stretching his lantern arm as far as it will go. He seems tense.
Someone's already here.
A young woman stands by the dock, eyeing us warily. Does she intend to cross tonight? Evidently, she has the same question. As we step up next to her, it's clear she isn't simply passing by. She's waiting. The stranger nods curtly to us.
Margaret.
Kiga the Steadfast.
Bamele. Hello?
Oh, Bamele, okay. There's a stuffy silence. Margaret turns to gaze out across the lake, expression unclear. With not much to say, Bamel and I do the same. From here, the black surface of the lake looks disarmingly calm. Wind rushes across its surface, a sound like whispering. Though, perhaps it actually is whispering. I concentrate, trying to place the difference, searching for breaks and rhythm. After a few seconds, I feel foolish. It doesn't matter what the noise is. Whether I hear them or not, we're not alone. The Nixie are out there. Feeling that I can't quite shake tells me they've already noticed the little group of people on their shores. It feels hostile. My stomach sinks, and I instead address Bamele.
Where is the guide?
Unless he's on the center island or on the complete other side, your guess is as good as mine. It's dark as pitch out there.
Panic rises inside of me. Panic I try hard to quell.
We can't cross without him, and we need to get going soon.
You can't cross with him either.
The woman behind us, Margaret, cuts in with something like a snort.
What?
I know the guide will be here tonight. I have already made arrangements with him to cross.
Bamele and I share a look. The woman seems haughty and willing to put up a fuss.
I have his word he'll take me today. It would be wiser for the two of you to begin the trip around if you're really in such a hurry. Or you can make camp here and wait for him to make the trip back if you prefer.
I don't need to turn my attention to Bamele to know he's riled up. I step in before he can say anything rash.
Even if that is so, my companion and I must begin the trip tonight.
Margaret is unimpressed and opens her mouth to argue further.
We'll wait for the guide to arrive before coming to a conclusion about any of this.
I'll kill her. I'll kill this woman. She clamps her mouth shut, then lets out a sigh.
You can do as you like.
With the matter tentatively settled, Bamele moves away. His finger begins to tap loudly against the top of his hilt. He shifts from one foot to another, then groans.
What's that bastard even up to?
I almost visibly start, but manage to restrain myself. He probably doesn't know any better. I'm sure of that. It's not worth mentioning.
With a mouth like that, you shouldn't even have the right to ask the guide to take you across.
How ludicrous. He's faced far worse than a bit of foul language.
Do you know anything that's happened with this lake?
I know enough.
Margaret is clearly not convinced, but she shrugs and makes a show of turning her back to him.
The guide's father is Garvin the Exemplar. Garvin never accepted the guide as his son, all the way up until he died, in this lake. Your statement could be seen as tasteless.
Oh.
Bamele rubs the back of his neck, his face regretful.
My apologies to the guide. I didn't mean it that way. I never knew about his... well, that.
A smile spreads across my face. When I quickly wipe away, he really did just misspeak. The silence slowly stretches between the three of us, growing more awkward with each passing second. Margaret seems irritated and Bamele abashed. I'm sure you are forgiven, Bamele. You're quite informed, Margaret. I'm going to talk about Bamele. He's kind of my
I
thing.
know you. You are brash but not intentionally cruel. I'm sure all is well.
But Melly smiles and claps me on the back.
You're a good woman, Kika. Smart, too. You've never been here, yet you knew more of the guy than I did.
I know about Garvin, truthfully. Tales of his deeds were some of the only stories my parents ever told.
Is that so? You could tell me more about it sometime.
I pause, unsure how to respond to this type of
I
request.
would like that very much.
Yes, I wouldn't mind that. It must wait until after this trip, though.
Of course. We should drop this topic sooner rather than later, in any case.
I agree.
Even if there's no harm meant, hearing someone mention Garvin is probably difficult for the guide, no matter what the circumstance. With the topic dropped, we each remain locked inside our own thoughts, not another word passing between us. Eventually, a small light appears on the bridge ahead, swaying through the foggy air. It gets closer and closer until it becomes apparent it's a figure carrying a lantern. That must be the guide, although I can't shake the ghostly aura it gives off. The figure steps onto the shore, but we wait for him to approach us instead of going to meet him. None of us are sure how close to the waters we can get before it is no longer safe. He stops in front of us and simply stares.
Are you the guide of Sinnlos?
The man nods. He has a sharp face and weary eyes.
Well, that's grand. We would like an escort across the lake.
But Melly motions to the two of us, and Margaret approaches, a strained smile on her face.
Hello, it's good to see you again. I'm ready to cross, as we've agreed upon.
The guy turns to face her as well, face remaining unchanged. It must not be a lie. He would have had to say something otherwise. She really does have preference to travel with him. That's a problem.
Is there a way we can all begin the trip tonight?
Yes, I will allow all three of you to go. But with that many, at least one will die before we reach the other side.
Oh man. Oh, Margaret, sorry. I furrow my brow. It's a disturbing addendum, and one offered with little emotion attached. But Melly glares back, asking without asking what we're supposed to do with such circumstances.
You should go around.
The sentence hangs in the air, the second half unspoken, if you want to live.
We don't have time for that. There are people counting on us for protection. Why does she need to go?
He jerks a finger at Margaret, whose face contorts with anger.
I don't need to explain myself to you. My journey has already been put off once, and I was promised I could go today. I will be going under any circumstances.
She meets Pameli's eyes with a gaze of steel. He starts to speak and she cuts in.
An extra day or two shouldn't be that much of a problem for you. Whoever you're meeting can surely wait such a tiny amount longer. Patience is a virtue.
The night is only so long, and if we're still on the bridges when the sun comes up, we'll all die as they sink back below the surface. If you don't decide soon, no one will be going.
The guide is dispassionate, stoic. I would almost feel something's wrong with him if I didn't share the trait myself. Pameli pulls me to the side, jaw clenched tight.
That woman isn't armed.
His voice is low. He darts a glance at Margaret.
We can easily get her to back off if we make this into an actual fight. After all, we have to go tonight, yes? If one of us really is to die, it'll be her. Would staying be a worse fate than her death?
I agree with you. I stare at the dock, refusing to meet Pameli's eyes. I try to keep my voice as level as possible.
We don't know her situation. This isn't a decision we can make for her.
What?
Pameli leans in closer, apparently having missed what I said. I remove the sympathy for her in my response when I speak
The
again.
guide won't accept something like that, I assume.
His face is grim.
Then what else do you have in mind?
First of all, you and I cannot split up. Either we both stay, or we both go.
Right. That's not a question.
I cross my arms, a hand on my chin. I have full confidence in my abilities and in Pameli's. but there's no reason not to believe the guide knows exactly what he's talking about. If we go, he might not be able to give the group the attention we each deserve. That would mean we truly would be putting Margaret's life at risk on top of our own. I believe we should go. We should go.
I believe you.
We have a city to protect after all. Bamelia's reply is firm. My steadfastness seems almost weak in comparison to its certainty. He addresses the guide.
We shouldn't waste more time. Let's shove off.
The guide slowly turns around. Without even a nod to show his agreement, Margaret stares at Bamelia and me, something of resolve in her gaze. Then she follows after the guide. At least she didn't insist we stay behind.
We should do what we can to protect her. It's our fault she's being put in even further
I
danger.
disagree.
Exactly my thoughts. We will take care of everything. Maybe I'm being naive, but I have no intentions of letting anyone fall victim to this lake tonight. Those monsters can starve.
I smile at him for a change, and Bamelia eagerly smiles back.
We're lucky to have each other in this, I think.
He turns to follow the others across. I will protect everyone on this trip. I will. We will make it through this. Then I step onto the dock and join them. As soon as I step onto the wood, the temperature drops. The light of my lamp shines against the water's surface. It is reflective as a mirror. Until we reach land again, death is only one small mistake away. We fall into line with the guide leading the way. Margaret stays close to him, and I behind her, watching to make sure she doesn't slip on a slick, wet wood. Bamelia brings up the rear. Each of us holds our lanterns in front of us, but it does little good. The fog is thick and nigh impenetrable, consuming the light as if hungry for it. Above the surface of the lake, it's deathly quiet. No longer is there the whispering wind, nor the sound of water lapping against the shore. It's just our own mismatched footsteps and the sound of my quickened breathing. My eyes drift back to the lake, against my better judgment. It's no wonder there's not even the sound of water, with how still the surface is. It seems almost sturdy, with the sheen of a black marble floor. I've heard rumors the water of Sinnlos is heavier, more difficult to disturb than natural water, that just the weight of its oppressiveness clinging is enough to keep someone down, even without them. Something even darker than the abyss of the lake flickers just below the surface, or at least, I think it does. I turn my gaze to Margaret's back. It's better to stay focused.
Fall back a bit. You're following me too closely.
The guide is looking over his shoulder, addressing Margaret.
I'm sorry.
If someone gets pulled into the lake, they'll instinctively reach for anything to hold on to. Do not let that be you.
Margaret's shoulders rise, and she nods with great seriousness.
I understand. Thank you for the advice.
He ignores her gratitude.
You can speak amongst yourselves if you so choose, as long as you pay attention to where you're going. There is no worth in listening to the sounds out there. If there's anything at all, it'll only be Nixie trying to set you on edge.
All right. Then, could you tell us your name? You didn't have a chance to properly introduce yourself, and I've only heard you being referred to as the guide.
He's facing the front again. His voice is expressionless as before. I have no way of guessing how he feels as he says this.
No.
It probably not something he wishes to talk about. However, there was something else I wanted to say, so changing the subject is not difficult.
Margaret, thank you for allowing us to join you.
Margaret shrugs noncommittally.
It wasn't exactly up to me. The guide said he would take you.
She hesitates, and then she looks tentatively over her shoulder at me.
But thank you for saying that. It's appreciated.
Bemele and I will do our best to be an asset on this trip, rather than a burden.
That's nice. I'm not afraid to be out here, though. Still, at least with your training, you should be able to take care of yourselves.
It's comforting to know that everyone here is so confident in their abilities. Not enough to forget how terrible it feels to be over this lake. I am not sure if that is fortunate or unfortunate, Believing yourself to be secure doesn't mean that you are. As the conversation lulls, a new sound breaks through. It's the whispering noise again. It's the chatter of inhuman voices, and this time coming from all around us.
Taking care of yourself is exactly what you need to do.
The guide is speaking again, except louder, as if to cover the Nixie's voice with his own.
Work to survive at all costs, and hope that everyone around you has enough sense to do the same. That's the only way you'll make it to the other side.
Margaret nods in response, but I hear a grunt from behind me.
Groups tend to go further when they work together to achieve the same goal.
The guy doesn't say anything in response to Bameli's grumbling either. I'm not sure whether he didn't hear Bameli or whether he just didn't feel the statement made thus far worthy of addressing. I have a feeling it's the latter. We go around a large bend in the bridge, part of it forking off to another way. I wonder how the guide knows which one of these essentially identical paths is correct when something in the corner of my eye catches my attention.
I believe I saw something over there.
Keep walking. No need to worry.
The guide's voice is calm and level. I decide against pressing the issue, not wanting to set everyone even more on edge.
What did he say?
Perhaps not wanting the conversation to be caught by the guide, he speaks softly, though I couldn't quite hear him because of it. I take my eyes off Margaret ahead for a moment to explain to Bameli, and stop dead in my tracks. Only one word is able to escape me in my stunned state. Oh.
Behind.
Behind Bameli stands another figure, looming in the darkness. Seeing my face, Bameli grabs the hilt of his sword. He whips around, then staggers swiftly backwards. Several meters away, a crooked, twisted black figure hobbles its way towards us. Some kind of liquid drips off its head, curling around the edges of its face. It almost looks like it's crying. Bameli backs up until he's standing beside me. The figure continues its slow advance, head jerking from one angle to another.
What on earth?
It's one of them.
Yes, Nixie that stumble across the bridges looking for opportunities.
The guide is standing next to us. I didn't even notice him approach.
The ones that can make it out of the water are generally referred to as prowlers.
I had no idea things like that were out here. Is that what Kika saw down the other path?
The guide says nothing, instead returning to the front of the party. Margaret watches him pass. Her frustration morphs into nervous optimism when something seems to come into her mind.
Well, Nixie aren't slowed down much by swords, but at least the light keeps them away, right?
Margaret's hand grips her face tight, and desperation bleeds into her voice. I bite the inside of my lip.
Direct light will force it to return to the lake. However, it'll try to drag the light, or you, down with it before it goes.
Instinctively, I reach for the hilt of my sword, despite the fact that it would do little to protect me. The prowler is getting close, jerking forward, stopping, then resuming its slow advance.
Okay, does anyone have a light we can leave here? That way it won't follow us.
Your light, Margaret.
Only matches.
You have that right there. Bameli spits. He's the one bringing up the rear, so he's the one most likely to be in danger if it keeps following. The guide, however, moves forward.
Don't forget it's there, don't let your guard down, and don't get left behind.
What? How am I supposed to keep walking with this thing at my heels? You said it wants to attack.
Don't give it the chance.
Bameli sputters in anger, and the guide summarily ignores him. I solidly grab hold of Bameli's upper arm.
Here, I'll lead you like this, and you can keep your focus solely on the prowler. Make sure it doesn't get too close.
Bameli eyes the guide with unresolved hostility, but allows himself to softly sigh in relief. He gazes at me with fondness.
At least there's someone I can count on.
Despite the fact I'm going against his advice, the guide says nothing more. It's clear now that he doesn't give a damn what we end up doing. Some part of me is glad for that. I want to help everyone make it through, and it would be worse to have to persuade the guide every time help was necessary.
Kika, thank you.
Bameli places a gentle hand on my shoulder. Yeah, whatever. Let's place my hand over his. I feel Bameli start as I reciprocate his touch, but just as quickly a smile replaces his shock. The moment is pleasant, a small balm against a large burn. I harden my expression, and Bameli follows suit. He moves his free arm down. I fully link his arm with mine, and now properly settled, look forward. Margaret is following the guide, with some reluctance, turning back every so often to check on us. I wave my lantern to signal we're catching up. Margaret returns her head to the front and quickens her pace. With a tug on Bameli, we start to follow them. The four of us continue cautiously over the bridges, only this time the wet, squishing footsteps of the prowler join the sound of our own. In spite of myself, I grip Bameli tighter. The prowler walks without a set pattern, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. It takes long steps, then short ones. At times, it stops walking entirely. Does it hurt to be out of the water like this, or is it trying to be difficult to read? Suddenly, the whispering in the lake grows louder. I steel myself, trying not to let it get to me. The most important thing in a situation like this is to remain calm. I can't lose my head. Then, all at once, I notice the guide and Margaret have come to a halt.
Bameli, they're stopping.
Bameli slows down as I do, and as we near Margaret's back, she says with something akin to distress.
There's another one.
I tug at Bameli and he understands. We draw up close to Margaret, ready to protect her if need be, but the guide holds out a hand.
Don't get any closer.
Just over his shoulder, I see another prowler stumbling towards us, white liquid dripping from its eyes. The guide's hand turns over in the air, palm up.
Give me a lantern. We'll throw it.
Margaret extends her own with a trembling hand when Bameli speaks instead, his back still turned.
If you have to take someone's, take mine.
Yes, an extra light won't do us much good when we're standing this close together.
Margaret takes Bameli's lantern from him, guarded relief displayed on her features.
Thank you.
She hands the lantern to the guide, whose hand grips it tightly, knuckles growing pale.
Stay here. I can't throw it too far, or the light will blow out before it reaches the Nyx.
He steps closer to the monster, his movements light and confident. As he nears, the prowler starts to back away. Is it only the approaching light that's making it retreat, or are they afraid of him? The guide is far enough away from us that the fog is partially obscuring him, hiding his movements. The voices from the lake grow louder and louder. Water suddenly begins to splash across the lake, in the distance and onto the edges of the bridge. They want him to mess up. Then suddenly the guide takes multiple long and fast strides forward, throws the lantern, and jumps backwards to regain the lost distance. There's a sharp hiss and then a deep splash, and the voices of the Nixie grow quieter. Not silent, but quieter. A sigh escapes me and the guide comes back to our group.
We should keep going before it comes back.
I glance at Bameli and realize he too is looking relieved at the guide before us. And then I see it. The first prowler, it's still there. It's right there. Pull Bameli forward. I shift around, pulling Bameli beside me. The prowler lunges after him, barely missing Bameli, but striking my lantern instead. The fire goes out and the two of us are plunged into an unearthly darkness. There's a slick splash, and I realize that Nixie has retreated into the water. Somehow, Bameli and I are still standing. We're still here.
Kika, thank you.
I can't respond. Something cold, wet, and slimy has grabbed my ankle. Kick it off. I kick my leg out as fast as I can, and the Nyx's hold slips. It can't pull with the momentum I've gained against it. Margaret rushes to my side, her lantern hanging out towards the Nyx. The light brushes its face. We see it for an instant. It's eyed wide, and then it slides back into the smooth surface of the water. Bameli grabs Margaret and I both, helping us towards the center of the bridge and cussing under his
I
breath.
only looked away for 1 second.
It's fine, Bameli. We're all fine.
Are you actually alright?
Margaret cocks her head down, examining my ankle, but there's nothing but a wet smudge around my trousers.
I am fine.
I say that, though I don't actually want to let go of Bameli. I need to in order to relight our lantern and provide us actual safety, but I feel such a strong desire not to be alone in this moment. I shake my head roughly and let go of him, relighting the lantern as fast as I'm able.
Kika, thank you. Again. You saved my life. I won't let this happen again.
Yes. Yes. It would be good for all of us to pay more attention.
Margaret nods solemnly. Suddenly it seems like we're all on the same side. It isn't only Bameli and I. She is with us, and more than simply presence. The guide's voice, as cold as that monster's grasp, ends my train of thought.
I lost the lantern I threw. The Nix grabbed it after the light went out.
Margaret makes a noise. I glance over, wondering whether she's upset, but there's a small smile on her face instead.
It's better than them taking anything else.
A nervous laugh bubbles up out of me, just quickly stops. Bameli chuckles in response, and our collective tension eases up, the adrenaline draining from our bodies.
We need to keep walking.
The guide starts down the bridge again, and we join him. I try to clamp down on the relief, the ease that wants to flood my head. It's not over. The prowler is gone, but so is Bameli's lantern.
You can stay near me, Bamele, since your lantern is lost.
I appreciate it.
Margaret goes on ahead of us. Bameli stays by my side as I keep at the end line. The breath of release from Margaret and Bameli is quickly swallowed by the somber atmosphere of Sinnlos as well, replaced by the gravity of the near-death experience. Never mind celebrating his survival. Something like that shouldn't have happened in the first place. The memory of the prowlers reaching out towards us appear each time I close my eyes.
Why does it look like something's dripping down their faces?
The prowlers are on Margaret's mind, too. Looking at her pained expression is as if though the moment of relief never existed at all.
I'm not sure.
Me neither. Something's wrong with them, though. They live in water. Air shouldn't be good for the things, but they want to drown humans so much they're willing to drag themselves around on land? It's not right.
Of course it isn't. They're monsters. They likely do not understand even the concept of right and wrong.
Well, I don't disagree that there's something very wrong about them. I truly, truly hope that's the last we'll see of the prowlers.
Something comes to her mind, causing Margaret to end her part of the conversation early.
Since you two have to share a light, wouldn't it be safer to be in the middle?
Margaret stops and waits for Bameli and I to reach her position.
That way, you'll catch the edges of my light and the guide's, and it won't be so dangerous if Bamele loses his position momentarily.
That's a very kind offer, Margaret.
Bameli's surprise is so apparent I want to cover his face with my hands to stop him from insulting her. She merely smirks. I think Margaret may be surprised with herself, too. Bameli returns to his casual surety.
As thoughtful as it is, I, at least, am fine with bringing up the rear. I'm used to keeping watch for monsters, and since there are two of us, I can pay attention to the back while Kika focuses ahead. It's not my light, though, so I shouldn't be the one to decide what she should do with it.
Margaret and Bameli turn to look at me in unison. Seems like it's my decision. Neither of them are wrong. As for me, my goal is to protect everyone. I can't very well do that with Margaret following behind us. But being stuck in the middle of the group could also be dangerous depending on what circumstances we come across. Getting pincered by the enemy would be an almost sure death, no matter how experienced Bameli and I are. I just don't know what to expect from this bridge, and that makes things so much more difficult.
So
Let's just keep...
behind?
Yeah, let's keep it how it is.
Seems like it.
Yes, I think we'll be good here. But really, thank you.
Well, alright.
Margaret respects our decision and trots ahead a bit to catch up with the guide. He who has paid no mind to the entire affair.
So, I don't want to sound like a child, but How much longer until we arrive at the halfway point?
Margaret chuckles, reflecting the amusement I don't want to
We
vocalize.
still have some ways to go.
Damn.
I suppress my laughter. Yet again a dispouting response. The gloom we've been under dissipates slightly, like light flickering through the fog.
The first trial tends to be the most difficult. I believe we will only react better from this point on.
I like the way you think.
Then a gleam enters Bameli's eyes and he
I
grins.
think Kika deserves a round of applause. Her quick reflexes are owed the utmost appreciation.
He leans softly into my shoulder, trying to get me to... what?
It was indeed a sight. You're quite capable. Bemele was also a sight, but for very different reasons. The way he froze with his mouth all agape was a laugh in itself.
Bameli shakes a fist at Margaret in mock anger, then shoots me an affectionate look.
You should know, she and I are usually on equal footing.
The only reason you had footing at all is because she pulled you back.
Bameli laughs self-consciously, scratching his head.
That's very true. You can always count on Kika.
I keep my eyes steadily ahead, unsure of how I should respond. I'm pleased, almost grateful to hear that they think of me, but I don't know what I could say that wouldn't seem pathetic. Instead, I contribute the best way I can. I keep my focus on the path ahead of us. Without a response from me, the conversation quickly dies out. Still, it eases my heart to be on such friendly terms with my companions. After some time, I notice Margaret isn't keeping up with the guide as much as she was before. I realize it's because the guide has increased his pace. Margaret begins to jog in an effort to keep up with him, and Bameli and I do the same. Despite this, the guide keeps getting further away. We go faster and faster, until suddenly we're full on sprinting across the slick wooden boards. Figures in the dark, fog fly past us at a blur, and it occurs to me that the branching path into the bridge appear to be sinking? I try hard to swallow my rising panic. The guide shouts something, but it's drowned out by the frantic pounding of our footsteps. I'm trying to piece together what he said. Don't stop. Turn. When he takes his massively sharp right down a different path, using his own momentum in the sleek wood to slide into a new direction with no loss of speed. Margaret must not have worked out the warning either, as she is completely caught off guard by the guide's changing course. She runs straight ahead, past the turn, and continues down the path we've been following up until now. She clumsily begins to halt her momentum down the wrong bridge. Then I come upon the fork. Turn. I make a hard turn, following the guide and leaving Margaret at the rear. Bameli's footsteps stay as loud as they were before. He's made the turn, as close behind me as ever. Out of the corner of my eye, I see Margaret turn around and try to come back to us, only to have the bridge in front of her fall away. I slow down for a breath, feeling the impulse to turn back, but ignore it. There's no time. Margaret can make the jump and then she'll rejoin us. I keep my eyes glued to the guide's back, ears perked for Margaret's footsteps approaching behind us. And then I hear it. A scream. I whip around, sliding to a stop. Margaret is sinking. The bridge she's on is sinking into the water. She's disappearing. She didn't jump.
What are you doing?
Margaret's head shoots up, her face drained of all color.
Jump!
She stumbles near the edge of the bridge, staring at the placid water of the lake. Even from a distance, I can see her shaking. I can't say if it's from the bridge's descent or her own fear. She barely seems to remain standing. I swallow painfully. Margaret bends and tries to jump. She curves in a small arc, achieving more height than she should, and lands directly in the lake with a muted splash. Bameli starts beside me, but I grab his hand and pull. We start running again, leaving Margaret flailing in the water behind us. We don't need to watch this. We both know exactly what will happen to her now. Margaret's anguished cries pierce the night, then the screaming stops. My legs grow weak. It isn't right, but I push myself to keep going. Bameli curses between heavy breaths, calling those things every foul name in his large book. I try to focus on the pounding of my feet, but my brain won't cooperate. Instead, I imagine Margaret's terror as she's clawed to the pieces by the Nixie. After everything I didn't help her, we left her in the dark. As the night wears on, our strength rapidly fades. How much longer will this last? People have to rest sometime. Almost as if in response to my thought, the guide abruptly halts. I skid to a stop as well, sliding on the surface of the wood.
Why did we stop?
Bameli's voice is tired, but his guard is up. The guide doesn't answer, just stares at something slightly out of view. I step up to join him, following his gaze further down the path. There, curled in a little ball, illuminated by the lantern's light, cowers a person. His hands grip his head, and he rocks from side to side, mumbling incoherently.
It's a man.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I couldn't. I just couldn't. Please. I'm sorry.
I'm struck with an array of questions. What is going on? Why would he wander out onto these bridges on his own? Did he make it this far by himself? Were there others with him? If that's somehow the case, I can't blame him for the state of shock he's in. The man stops mumbling. He glances above him, seemingly only just now having the strength to lift his head. His expression, the deepest sadness, along with the clear markings of terror, are scrawled across his face. I stare at him in shock, not sure what to do.
Leave him.
I snap my eyes away from the man and instead to the guide's cold, implacable face.
No! We can't just leave him here. Without light, it's certain he'll die.
He won't make it regardless.
The guide turns to look at us, his eyes seeming to glow from the closeness of his lantern. For the first time, I feel uncomfortable in his presence.
Whoever shelters him will only risk dragging themselves down with him. Leave him.
I glance at my partner. Bameli is outraged. I'm trying to think of some kind of compromise when the guide speaks again, his voice cutting.
If the man comes, then whoever is shielding him will have to remain at a distance from the rest of the group. Far enough that you can't see me, just my light. That is how you will travel across the bridges. I didn't agree to lead this man, and I won't. If you ask me to, I will leave you all behind.
Adrenaline surges through my veins and I tense up. It's a painful reminder that the guide isn't here to save our lives, but merely to show us the way. We're on our own. Bameli and I frantically share more looks between each other, trying to communicate without words. Neither of us have a desire to speak and be the first to make a choice. The man is standing now, though still hunched with his arms wrapped around himself as if expecting a blow. He stares at the ground rather than at us. Because of this, I'm having trouble reading his face. What exactly happened to him?
Are you well, stranger? Do you know where you are and why you're here?
He glances up, not at me, but towards me, his eyes resting somewhere near my collarbone.
I'm fine. You all can go on your way. Forget you even saw me here.
That's absurd. You have no way to defend yourself. We can't leave you.
Yes, I'm sure in your eyes I might not seem like much, but that's not exactly a fair shake. Maybe in a perfect world, every man would be as large as you. But that's not how things always go. It doesn't mean I'm defenseless.
The man's response is meandering. The words themselves seem to be in good jest, but he's still barely looking at us, fidgeting with his hands. Bameli frowns, unimpressed.
It was a joke.
He smiles hesitantly, making eye contact with each of us for the first time.
What part of it was supposed to be the joke? Do you even realize what is happening in this moment?
Never mind. Forget that too. Point is, I'm alright.
You have found yourself out alone and unlit on Sinnlos.
Exactly. Something must be wrong with you.
Oh no, sounds like you've been talking with my father.
He lets out a weak little laugh, coupled with an eyebrow raise, voice trembling. No one really knows what to make of this. The man gives a small wave and begins down the path we came. Bameli huffs, tossing his hands into the air.
That's not even the right way.
It is for me.
Oh? You must have come quite a ways if it was the other shore you started on.
The man's smile grows.
Good. That's not so bad.
There is no response to this remark. Unsure of what could be said.
I still think he should come with us. A person needs a light, and the guide himself said he won't be able to manage on his own. Sticking with us is his best option.
I look over the man's body, noticing the scrawniness of his limbs. Scrawny, but not necessarily lacking in muscle. The bravado he was showing as he tried to leave us has faded yet again, and now he's standing quietly, looking at us as if watching a play. Interest, but no true connection to the events.
It's easy for you to say such things, but whose light are you offering? It's not mine, and you are putting her in even more danger with your own presence already.
Bameli's hands turn into fists. He looks away, but doesn't say anything. For a moment, no one does. I feel a cold sweat on my brow as what I feared comes to pass. He's stopping us from protecting another. Why must he get involved now? Why can he not just leave us to make our own decisions?
You. Don't worry about me. I'll be on my way now.
The man's voice is full of something I cannot place, and he starts to shuffle back down the way he came, arms still clenched around himself. I know the guide wants to act as though there is no option, however, I could stay back with him. It'll put Bameli and myself at significantly more risk, but at least this man will stand a chance. I'm gonna see what happens if I just don't do anything. I can't risk it. Bameli stares at the man as he leaves. We both watch him drag his little frame down the bridge, quickly fading from sight. We had to let him go. We've already suffered the loss of one of our own. The space the man vanished into is dark and silent. We can see and hear nothing of him, not even his footsteps. The guide was right. There are no other options. Well, that is what I have to believe. We need to get through this somehow, and being weighed down with guilt will only distract us. The guide starts moving again at a quick pace. After a moment's hesitation and one last glance into the truly lifeless fog, we run to catch up to him. We walk onwards in silence. Our party hasn't changed, but the stranger was never added to it, so it's not as if it makes sense to miss him, but there's still a sense of loss all the same. No one attempts mirth. Though Bameli constantly looks to want to reach out towards my empty hand, always thinking better of it before doing so. I keep thinking I should have done more. I should have pushed the guide harder to change his mind so it was less dangerous to keep the man around. Something. Anything. But I have to let this go. I'm not going to forget that man, I'll never forget him. But we still need to get through this. I curl my hands into fists, hoping it'll strengthen my resolve. Then I push forward. We turn down a different path, and the guide stops. Ahead of us stands a group of prowlers. At the sound of us, they turn their heads in unison, as if they knew we were coming. I inhale. The prowlers wriggle somehow, their skin moving more slowly than it should, sliding across their skeletons. They laugh.
We cannot lose another lantern at this point. We're almost to the island.
The guide rummages through his coat with his free hand.
What are you planning?
Bameli's tone is borderline threatening, but the guide ignores him. He pulls out a small pouch, then opens a latch on his lantern.
Wait, are you going to throw that at them? What if the bridge sets on fire?
It will. We're going to run.
This is insane! These bridges are hellish enough without them also being on fire. And what about the other man? If he's still out there, this could...
He's dead. We're not losing another lantern.
He says it with such detached certainty. It's as if he saw it happen himself. No one argues with him. The guide steps closer to the prowlers. We fall into step behind him, staying close to his back. He bends his lantern back down until it is lowered to his outstretched arm. The pouch in his hand is set aflame. With a practiced flick of the wrist, he swings the staff back up. The glass on the lantern snaps closed.
Don't get left behind.
He takes 3 quick steps, then tosses the pouch. The prowlers are back in the water before the pouch even lands. As soon as it does, the fire starts to lick and curl itself around the wood. The guide breaks into a sprint, and so do the rest of us. The blaze grows, despite the heavy dampness from the lake. These bridges aren't normal bridges. Of course, that's true. Nothing here is right. Hopefully they won't collapse with the flames. We stay on the guide's heels, almost too close for comfort. If he stops abruptly, we'll all crash into one another, maybe even fall off the bridge. Then the world tilts. I was mid-stride when I put my foot down. The bridge isn't where it was. It lurched to one side, either because it was weakened or pushed. But Melly and I managed to keep our ground, as does the guide. He presses on without even bothering to see if we're able to follow. But Melly growls in frustration as we push to keep up with the guide's pace. As our storm of feet thunder across the boards, a silver sliver begins to rise into view just above the edge of the water.
It's the island.
The island. I squint and suddenly make out the craggy forms of land and earth. I see it. We're almost there. Safely at long last in sight. New energy surges through me. We push ourselves faster, longing to put these godforsaken bridges behind our backs. All at once the bridge ends, and our entire group rushes ashore. Earth. Solid earth, a haven from the water. I catch my breath while still moving even further away from the dark shoreline. I can't believe we actually made it. Even more difficult is the idea that we're only halfway done. When night falls once more, we have to do it all again. A heavy arm falls across my shoulders, and I straighten to see Pameli's smile, smiling wearily at me.
Good work out there.
It's not the usual commendation of a job well done. There's sadness, perhaps even sympathy in the sentence. It ends flatly. With a sigh, he leans his head to the side without having it rest slightly against mine. Usually Pameli's comfort and good nature gives me at least this urge to smile, but right now it feels like a hollow victory. Despite still having the comfort of one another, we were incapable of doing any true good. We were only able to save ourselves. A quiet moment passes between us. And then the guide is there. He moves so smoothly that his steps on the soft sand are nearly silent, and his dusky clothes blend with the thinning of the night.
The sun will rise soon. The fire on the bridge is the only reason this island isn't overrun with prowlers right now. However, they could still pose a threat.
Pameli levels an empty look towards the guide.
Is there something we should do?
The guide takes us to an area a bit further inland, but not too far from the water. Trees partially obscure our location, and there's enough room to watch the coast in case prowlers start to emerge from the water. Essentially, it's a place where an ambush would be hard.
If any of you see anything at all, speak up. We don't want them to sneak up on us.
Almost automatically, each member of the group turns to a different direction. As the sky continues to fade from pale purple to a muted blue, the waters stay silent. For the first time, nothing happens. It's a miracle. Suddenly, my chest is lighter and the air is fresher. The first pricks of light appear over the horizon, stinging my eyes after such a long journey through darkness. A sound catches my attention and I move my focus towards its direction. The guide is opening the latch on his lantern again. He gently, almost respectfully, blows out the light.
We no longer have to worry about the Nixie. It is over for today.
I'm almost unable to keep tears of relief from pouring out at those words. We made it through the night. We survived. No one feels the need to speak. We look at each other, an understanding passing between us. Then we find our own space as comfortable as we can get and lie down for the rest we weren't sure would ever come. My eyes slowly blink open and readjust to the brightness, what little there is. The sun is obscured by a thick layer of fog, making it impossible to estimate the time of day. I prop up my elbows and push myself up. The ground is hard and rocky, but that isn't the only reason I'm eager to get on my feet. I check my surroundings. The harsh, craggy earth of the island is interlaced with twisting vines and gnarled branches. Beside me, Bameli is fast asleep. The guide, however, is nowhere to be seen. I realize that I don't recall seeing him lay down with everyone. It's likely he left us hours ago. There is a creeping silence here. I can't help but shudder at the hollow, aching feeling inside of me. It refuses to relent. I shift my weight back and forth, unsure of what to do with myself. Memory of last night's harrowing journey flicker through my mind. Bameli wakes suddenly, rising with alarm. My mouth opens, then shuts, and after a moment of fumbling, a word finally escapes. Bameli gives me a gentle smile and makes his way over to me.
Morning.
A pocket of quiet descends over us. Bameli sighs. The atmosphere is weighing on him
We
already.
should eat something soon.
Yes.
A distinct rustling of the leaves around catches my attention. The guide appears, emerging from the thicket. Bameli glares at him as he makes his way over.
Pixie will not tread on land in daylight. However, being near the shoreline is still dangerous. If you leave the center of the island, remain cautious. Before the sun sets, I will be in this area. It would be wise to meet me here before nightfall.
Why do you do this?
I sharply turn towards Bameli as he snarls and confronts the
You
guide.
would just let him follow behind us. If you had been there before, none of this would have happened. They didn't have to die.
The guide looks away, seemingly unaffected.
If all you're going to do is leave everyone to be lost, then why bother guiding us at all?
Despite Bameli's severe words, the guide apparently considers his piece here finished. He turns towards the forested area from which he came.
Wait.
Bameli calls out to the guide, reaching towards him. Before he can make contact, I quickly place a hand on his shoulder. He lowers his arm to his side, though I can still feel wrath emanating from him. We stay this way until the guide disappears from view. Bameli begins to kick at the ground, spraying tiny pieces of gravel about.
Bameli, I know you're angry, but regardless of our feelings, we need the guide. If he leaves us, we'll all die.
And we've done so well with him?
I give him a cold glance. We won't even know which bridge to take without the guide. Bameli knows that. This needs to stop. There are people counting on us to make it back.
We can't afford to lose our way.
The anger etched into his expression fades into sadness.
Can't stay here right now.
Quietly, I speak. I'll speak with Bameli. I speak too softly for Bameli to hear. Lingering for only a moment, I start following the trail Bameli took. It doesn't take long to notice I'm there, and he slows his pace so I can easily catch up. We fall into step for a short while, neither of us speaking. Eventually we come to a thick stand of trees and wordlessly weave our way through the branches. Once we're hidden by the foliage, Bameli leans against a tree trunk, head hung low. Negativity radiates off of him, but I don't know what to say. Fortunately, he breaks the silence.
Apologize for back there.
I nod firmly. His reply isn't unexpected. For as long as I have known Bameli, he has had a tendency to let his temper flare, then regret it later. After processing his thoughts,
I know that dealing with these sorts of situations calmly is part of the job. But I cannot tell myself everything is fine or that none of it matters. Sure, I can feel something without it being anger, but I've not figured that out either.
rather than speak, I try to listen as supportively as I can while Bameli continues to argue with himself. He sighs while pensively rubbing the bridge of his nose.
He's simply being foolish. Would it really have been so harmful to try and help someone else instead of focusing solely on oneself? It looks to me like we're telling ourselves these lines to avoid responsibility.
I don't know. It's possible you helping would have worked better. It's also possible it would have been worse.
Bameli stares across the empty waters of Sinnlos.
I want it to be clear that I have not forgotten that those people across this lake are depending upon us. Not for a moment. But would they want us to be so focused on them that we should turn a blind eye to others right in front of us? Even if they would, does that matter? We are more than weapons. We are people. Do we have to cast that aside, turn away from our fellow humans, just to achieve a so-called greater good? It is not as though this village is a haven of saints. They are only as worthwhile as we are, and these people on the bridges with us, aren't they?
I don't know.
I can feel the weight of his words settle upon me. I have had similar thoughts and have questioned what the correct choice is, but unlike Bameli, I have always been silent. I clench my fist tight to try and stop from saying something rash. Bameli closes his eyes tight and rubs his face again. It is clear this hasn't been enough to give him much peace. Eventually his eyes reopen and look directly into mine.
What do you think about all this, Kika? Please, be honest with me. I want to hear it.
Suddenly my eyes are hot. My vision blurs slightly from tears I desperately am trying to hold back.
I really don't know. That is the truth.
My words are soft. Whether he heard or not, the look on my face is enough to garner attention. His eyebrows shoot up in surprise. He walks over to me slowly, concerned.
Kika, what is troubling you?
I don't have the answers to what you were wondering. Who are we meant to protect? Everyone we can? Whoever we're told to serve and no one else? Just ourselves? Should we only try to protect others when the risk is minimal? I have no idea what the right option is.
But Meli's confusion only mounts with my words.
I'm sorry for disappointing you.
No, you haven't disappointed me in any way. I never should have expected someone else to give me answers to those kinds of questions. It is only... I did not think that...
He does not finish his thought, but I know what he meant to
I
say.
do not think I was concerned with these issues.
He smiles awkwardly over being caught.
Yes. You never seemed to be bothered by anything we experienced before now.
With his words, my carefully held resolve crumbles. In an instant, my cheeks are wet with hot fluid cooling in the chill air as it slips down my face.
Always cared. I've always been afraid and confused, but I have kept up a...
I stop and gasp for air, my throat almost as tight as when we were running in from the bridges.
farce of strength in order to get by.
I breathe deeply with relief, terrified and lightheaded from my confession. But Meli's voice is as delicate as flower
I
petals.
had no idea. How could I not have noticed?
Because I did whatever I could to make sure no one did. I have never wished to appear weak in front of others. But the truth is, I barely get through each day. I often feel overwhelmed with sadness at all that we have experienced.
But Meli gently places his hands on my shoulders that I try not to sob wildly.
Kika, I truly apologize for all the thoughtless things I have said to you.
I shake my head, sniffling.
There is no need for you to apologize.
He smiles, the warmth almost enough to make me forget the damp.
I beg to differ. I have failed to treat you right.
You have always been respectful.
A person needs more than respect from their comrades. They also need support. I have never given you that kind of consideration because I believed someone like you did not need it.
The same could be said for me.
Nonsense. You have listened to my rambling on more occasions than I can remember. Though I admit my memories may not be there due to being drunk many of those times.
But Meli laughs at himself while glancing in my direction to encourage me to do the same. His comforting words make me smile, and I feel my tears finally cease to fall. Then I will continue to support you. He grins wider than he has since we began this horrible journey.
You have my thanks.
And you have mine.
Abruptly, his expression becomes serious once
I
more.
will come to answer these questions someday. But no matter what I decide, I will still put trust in your judgment.
I fear I may not live up to the belief he seems to have in me, but I nod firmly. He returns my nod.
Perhaps we should go check how everything is on the island.
That sounds like an excellent idea. And I will accompany you, of course.
Glad to hear it.
Together, we walk back towards the interior of the island. Both our moods lift as we stand side by side. Alright guys, I think I'm going to end it here. I really like this so far. I know I'm kind of making some very only save ourselves decisions here, but the guide, I kind of think we need him, and if he's not willing to help us if we help other people, well, I just want us to survive. That's the main goal here, just the two of us. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Later.